Hey guys, welcome to the Beyond Local podcast. Today we are going to be chatting about a very important topic to any business thinking through how to effectively put together a digital marketing strategy. Do you insource it? Do you hire from within and build out your team, or do you outsource it? And so today we have two guests. We have the head of SEO at LSEO.com, Kyle Kozie, and we have LSEO's president, Kris Nash. Now, Kyle, you put together a really outstanding blog post looking at this question of whether or not to insource or outsource. My understanding is you interviewed over 100 people asking them this question. And can you give us kind of what you found at a high level?
Yeah, so what we did, Kris, was we, like you said, polled over 100 businesses and asked them, do they prefer to hire an agency to do their SEO, or do they prefer to hire somebody in-house to do their SEO? And the overwhelming response, 81% said they prefer to hire an agency, and there were a lot of reasons. But just to touch on some of those reasons, it was mainly for the cost effectiveness, the quality of the work, the flexibility, and the timely fashion that an agency is able to get work done in.
We're going to peel back the onion on this topic, but I want to get both of your kind of perspectives. Kyle, you've been in digital marketing as a senior level SEO expert for greater than 5 years. Kris, you've been in this digital marketing space for 20 years. You founded an e-commerce company called All About Dance. You built that into one of the nation's leading e-commerce companies in the dancewear space and sold that. So I want to get both of your perspectives on this topic, right? I mean, you would think that we come into this with a bias, right? We're part of a digital marketing agency, so one might think, our listeners or our viewers might think that we're trying to sell the sizzle of the agency. But let's really kind of carefully peel back the onion and see if we can't analyze why a business might select an agency over building out that in-house team, right? So if 81% of them selected agency. So Kris, let's hear from you. You are now part of an agency, but you came from an e-commerce company. So what were some of the considerations you went through back in the day when you were running that company?
I always wanted the talent in-house. It was just kind of an ownership feel. It was a comfort level. I think it depends on the type of work you're trying to hire into. When you look at something like as complex as SEO, to actually find that level of talent and to find it locally and to find it with the kind of efficiency and experience that I think is required, that's a different question. So I think over the course of my career, and as I was bringing in new team members, if we found a diamond in the rough that had that kind of skill set, we almost always hired them. But I think typically speaking, like I did want them there, but ultimately when I was looking for a high level skill set, we almost always eventually went out to go find the real skill because we had the entire world, really. I mean, but obviously we hired mostly from the domestic United States. But that really was the driver of, I think, what determined if we actually brought the talent in-house.
So, summation. So, you had a bias towards wanting to hire internally, but you found that finding candidates was difficult. Speak a little bit more to that, right? What does it take to do more than just hang a shingle or suggest that you have some SEO experience? What do you get when you go to an agency versus what you might get if you hired someone with less experience?
I think the first thing is actually depth of experience working on multiple accounts. I think typically, you find this in marketing in general. I think kids come out of college with a marketing degree and they've never actually practically applied that knowledge. So that's the first thing I would do to vet. Like, what have you actually worked on? Show me the results, show me the campaigns, give me the case studies. I want to analyze the performance, first of all. I think that gets missed often with an employee coming in. They make a lot of promises. Everybody knows how to interview. And so that first layer is tough because you have to kind of make a few leaps of faith. With an agency, you can vet the heck out of them in advance. I mean, you could do that with employees. I just think it's a bit aggressive. And ultimately, they come in, and there's a lot of promises made. With an agency, you can hold their feet to the fire. It's easier to start and stop. And then if they're not performing, as long as you've negotiated a sound contract up front, you get rid of it and you move on and you find the next agency. But hopefully you've done the vetting up front to make it worthwhile.
Some of the benefits of insourcing you mentioned in your article, Kyle. You mentioned the dedication to just one account. You talk about culture and the submersion into the culture. You know, it's difficult. You know, your agency might have a different core purpose or core values than your entity has. But what are some of the other benefits that you unearthed through the study?
Yeah, so a lot of the reasons you just said, some of the benefits for insourcing can be the cons of the agency, but the cons of insourcing could also be the benefits of the agency. So one thing you just said is dedication to the account, sure, but when you think about it from the agency perspective, I would never want to work on just one account internally for someone because I'd feel like I was constantly up against the deadline. The work just can't get done in a timely fashion, but when you think of an agency, it's sort of like an assembly line. If we have an SEO account come in, I have many people on my team who could do the different tasks, whether it's keyword research, write some content, do some link building outreach. It's an assembly line, and I have many people do that, and we could provide a lot more work up front on a monthly basis as opposed to just one person doing that for one account.
You know, I just had a thought when you were talking. A previous hire of LSEO was someone that was the in-house manager at a client, and of course we got the client's approval before we hired them. They were going to actually release them. But here's what I thought of. This individual was hired to be the digital marketing manager internally, but because he was technical, he ended up changing the printer ink. He ended up, you know, setting up computers for new interns and new employees. And I'm not kidding you and not exaggerating that probably 60% of his time was spent outside of digital marketing. So one of the reasons they were going to let him go was that he wasn't hitting their performance targets. And candidly, I looked at it and said, this individual actually has really great subject matter expertise. I'd love him on the LSEO team, but he wasn't working out there because you get pulled in so many directions internally, right? Is that something that, you know, that happens, right? So we take our best internal people and we make them like sort of multitaskers, and then we take their eye off the prize or off the ball. Whereas with an agency, there just is built into the agreement much more accountability. Do you agree, Kris? Because going back to your All About Dance days, I know you outsource because you outsourced to my agency, Pepper Jam, at that time.
For sure.
And we had a relationship with you for many years.
Yeah.
So you were
and
able to...
And it grew too, because we weren't doing affiliate marketing in the beginning, and so we moved into that channel. You helped us on the paid media side too back then as well. So I think that it really requires, in my opinion, if you're going to hire internally, your system has to be so efficient and your company has to be run at such a high level to get the most productivity out of employees. I don't think your average company is at that level. Yeah. Now, if you have that process internally and you've locked down your policies and procedures, then yes, I think those employees can be productive. I think you can get lucky. We've gotten lucky at LSEO because we happen to have a number of agencies and digital organizations around our area. So Kyle's one of them. We plucked some of the best talent from around the area, and we've been able to find that talent. But when you think about long-term scaling up the organization, we're going to have to look to the outside and maybe recruit to bring into our area, et cetera. But in general, I do think there is, I think we haven't really touched enough on the benefits of having an internal team or into bringing these resources in-house. To be able to sit across from somebody, check in on a regular basis, and again, if you have an efficient system to actually hold them accountable and know what they're doing, that is a difference. It makes an enormous difference to have somebody sitting in that same office to be able to walk in there. And as long as you're managing that process and you have a good level of communication, I do think there are benefits to having that person in-house.
Got it. So let's transition a little bit and focus on what the majority of the respondents to your survey suggested, which is that they believe that outsourcing to someone like LSEO or some other digital marketing agency was the better option. let's talk about, because you had said that sort of looking at this topic, it's sort of like you look at the cost savings, differently. So let's talk about that, the money and the cost. So if you're hiring someone internally, you might be paying benefits.
Yep.
You've got office space. You've probably got a brand new $2,000 Mac, or not. But you don't necessarily have to incur that cost when you outsource.
Yeah.
What else? What about the competitiveness of salaries and being able to do that?
Yeah, so a majority of the respondents mentioned the cost effectiveness. If you just think about it, a typical agency account, let's say 2,000 to 2,500, sure, you'll have more enterprise brands who can pay more, upwards of $10,000. But typically an SEO account, 2,000 to 2,500, which on a yearly basis would cost you anywhere from $25,000 to $30,000. I would say good luck finding an experienced SEO employee for that price.
I don't think they exist at that price.
And if you think about on top of that, that employee in-house is going to need a bunch of SEO tools that require a yearly subscription. Like you said, the benefits.
So just so people understand, because I get to see the cost of these things, like an SEMrush account per user could be $1,000 or multiple thousands of dollars a year. A Moz account, depending on how much data you rely on it for, could be several $100s a month. So these things add up such that if you're going to access these tools internally, take that $40 or $50 or $60,000 that you're going to have to pay the SEO expert internally, and then layer on another couple of $1,000s.
Yep. I was just going to add, and if you think about it, like I said, it's sort of like an assembly line. For that price, you're getting 4 or 5 employees.
Yeah. Yep. Flexibility. Flexibility is a huge thing here. If someone isn't working out internally, you have all kinds of HR standards, et cetera, that you must follow. And again, it can impact the culture. Terminating somebody internally is much more likely to impact the culture than terminating an agency. So the flexibility here is something that's probably one of the reasons why folks had said to outsource instead of insource. Speak about setting the agenda, particularly around deliverables, and why it might make sense that you get it codified in an agreement with an agency versus not.
I think that this is an area where if you look at really making your team efficient, you really should have a very clear set of responsibilities at the employee level. That's key when you bring an employee in regardless. When you do it contractually, that's kind of baked into the thinking when you hire externally. Right out of the gate, you get a contract, you know exactly what they're delivering. I think it's hard, again, it's more challenging for organizations to take that leap and to really lock down their internal process when you bring an employee in, and then to have the discipline. If that employee is not working out, everybody delays that process. I don't care who you are. I mean, I know there's kind of cutthroat humans out there that just execute on that, but nobody wants to let people go. So inevitably you drag it out ever so slightly. There's significant cost there. And then bringing that person in, there's significant cost. So when you're doing it from a contractual standpoint, you know exactly what you're getting. And as long as you maximize that and like literally take advantage in a positive way of what those companies bring to the table and hold them accountable, then I mean it's hard to argue that it wouldn't be worth outsourcing premium experience and responsibility like that.
So 30 seconds or less. Final thoughts. Insource, outsource.
I don't mean to sound pro outsource to an agency, but that's all I've ever been a part of, and I know it works. We work on many different accounts, hundreds of accounts on a monthly basis, and we do SEO. We know what works, we know what doesn't work, for all different niches, all different categories of business. And one of the biggest things is, like I've been preaching, is the work gets done in a timely fashion because we have so many different people handling different aspects of the account, and then we could all come together, strategize, brainstorm, and execute on it, and that seems to work the best. And I mean, for all the reasons we've listed throughout this podcast, and go read the article on the website, it's definitely leans in favor of hiring an agency versus outsourcing.
That was 47 seconds. Nash.
I mean, it's, I'm biased without a doubt, but it's biased based on data and based on experience. And so I don't even think it's a question of the more efficient side of the process. I just think you have to be, if it's internal, you better be ruthless to some degree and hold those people accountable and lock down their responsibilities and set performance goals for that team member. But on balance, it's just easier to do that when you outsource, period.
Mm-hmm. Well, guys, thank you so much for your time. Hope to have you guys on a future episode, maybe even have you host one of the episodes. And for the listeners and the viewers, thank you so much for tuning in to Beyond Local.